Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, listeners, and welcome to episode 71 of Movie Oubliette, our equator-straddling podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, growing an epic lockdown beard in Cambridge, UK.
And me, Dan, going into a snap 5-day lockdown in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh gosh, 5 days without brunch. How will you cope?
I don't know.
We focus on sci-fi, fantasy and horror because relaxing in a bath surrounded by candles, waiting for Aragorn to bludgeon us to death with a frying pan is our idea of de-stressing in the evening.
Oh, it is indeed. Hello, Conrad.
Hello, sir. How are you dealing with your 5-day lockdown?
Oh, I mean, the Australian Open is on. Everyone's going to be watching the tennis at home. And by the time this episode comes out, we'll be out of lockdown anyway.
Well, it's week 7 of our third lockdown here in the UK.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Yesterday I went to the post box. That was exciting.
Wow. Highlight of the day.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So all I'm doing is ordering movies from Amazon and forgetting what they are. So that all these Amazon boxes arrive with movies in. And it's yes. I ordered this? Why have I ordered this?
Well, speaking of post boxes, anything in our mailbag?
Yes, we heard from Stuart Thorne, who is referring to our love of Matthew Lillard in Hackers and Scream. And he said, "Dear Sirs, Matthew Lillard as William Hastings in Twin Peaks Series 3. That is all."
Oh, I'm a big fan of Twin Peaks, but I haven't seen the latest season.
No. Well, if you want to see a very different Matthew Lillard, that really does showcase what an incredible actor he is, because he is completely different in that series.
Okay.
He is a terrified man accused of a murder that he does not remember. And
okay.
He's really, really good in it, so I can understand where Stuart's coming from on that.
Right.
And when I shared the news that Joe Dante's Explorers, which we covered in a previous episode, is going to get the deluxe Blu-ray treatment by Shout Factory in the coming months, Copper Top Dan said, absolutely ecstatic about this release. It's a sucky time to be saving money.
Yes.
Yeah. Very true. So I'm very excited about that. They haven't told us what the special features are going to be, but you can tell from the running times that they're going to have both cuts of the movie on there. So that's pretty exciting.
Right. I'm still sore that I bought the Blu-ray of My Bloody Valentine to have 0 features and the inferior cut as well.
Yes, yeah. And finally, of course, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And on My Bloody Valentine, he says, slashers aren't usually my thing. They usually have to come up with clever character motivations and a spirited haunted house vibe for me to really enjoy. My Bloody Valentine doesn't do the motivation thing, and the theatrical cuts vibe was totally butchered by the censors. I didn't realise the censors were the problem until I listened to Movie Oubliette's latest episode about the film. I just thought the editing sucked. Yeah, very true.
Oh, that MPAA, the worst.
Yeah, they have a lot to answer for. Nearly as bad as Disney Plus covering up Daryl Hannah's bottom with hair on Splash. It's just stupid. Yes. So that's our mailbag.
Ooh. Well, speaking of bottoms, kind of, I believe we're doing something a little bit sexy today for the film.
Gosh, really? Now, let me amble over to the Movie Oubliette and find out. Oh, my word, this is a big day out for me here in lockdown England.
You get to go down the hall.
Oh, weird, my key's not working. Have you changed the locks?
No, I haven't. There might be a spare one.
Oh, yeah, the magnetic hidey hole thing, yeah. There we go. Okay, I'm coming back.
Hey, how's that for wet work?
What do you have, Conrad?
So I have a 1998 American crime thriller, A Perfect Murder, directed by Andrew Davis and starring Michael Douglas, Gwyneth Paltrow, Viggo Mortensen, and David Suchet.
Right. I haven't seen this.
No, it's a remake of Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, written by Patrick Smith Kelly, based on the original stage play by Frederick Knott.
Oh, okay. So what happens in this?
Well, in it, Wall Street shark Steve Taylor has it all: riches, power, and a seemingly ideal passive-aggressive marriage to youthful billionaire heiress Emily. But when he discovers Reddit Robin Hoods have crashed his investments and his wife is secretly creasing the sheets with bohemian mumbling artist David, he decides to kill two birds with one stone, or at least blackmail the lover to kill his wife so that he can inherit her money. But in this twisty-turny thriller, nothing is what it seems, everyone is double-crossing, and there's a big spiky meat thermometer prominently placed in the kitchen. Who will survive, and who will get away with a perfect murder? Find out after the break.
And we have a guest joining us today.
We do, to guide us through this twisty-turny, sexy thrill.
Can't wait.
Me neither. Our guest today is an exceptional film and TV journalist who covers all things horror for the likes of Bloody Disgusting, but has a particular fondness for slashers and creature features, especially the wet ones. He's appeared on the show before as one half of the horror quiz, but today he's footloose and fancy-free. It's Joe Lipsett.
Hey.
Hello, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Thank you for letting me come back and hit you with yet another questionable film.
Yes, well, questionable films are our stock in trade, and we love it when you bring us a film featuring socialites in a museum.
Right? I was surprised. I'd completely forgotten there was another museum in here. So I just thought, oh, okay, well, if I come back a third time, I'll have to pick a museum set film.
Yes. So, yes, we're talking about A Perfect Murder, a remake of Hitchcock, no less.
Mhm.
I guess the first question is, why did you pick this movie and what was your first experience of it?
So I have a love for erotic thrillers, and this is sadly a bit of a dormant / maybe dead genre at this point. But at the time when I was really starting to go and see a lot of movies, this was one of the genres that was really flourishing at the time. Like, it's a late 80s, kind of early 90s phenomenon. And when I pitched to you folks that I wanted to come back and talk about an erotic thriller, we had to have a bit of back and forth because oftentimes they're a little heavy on the erotic and not so much on the thriller. So we tried to settle on one that would fit both categories. And A Perfect Murder is one that I definitely saw in theaters. I remember thinking the cast was exceptionally sexy. Like, this is a very sexy film in parts. And the funny other piece that I have with this particular film is it was the first DVD that I ever owned. So came out in theaters in 98, and I think it would have been on DVD back in 1999. And I thought, you know what, this is a good film to own on DVD because it has a high rewatchability. Question mark in hindsight. But the other funny part of the story is I never got to watch it because my house was broken into and they stole the DVD.
Wow.
They stole your classic Warner Brothers cardboard snapcase.
They sure did. Oh, boy, did I ever hate that packaging, though.
Oh, yeah.
In hindsight,
Yeah.
again, you're welcome to it, thieves.
Yeah. So I'd seen this movie. It was also one of my first DVDs as well,
Wow.
sadly.
What?
I think it was just excitement of the format.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't know what it was. But Dana, I don't think you'd seen this before, had you?
No, it's the first
Oh,
time.
really?
First time for me. But I had seen Dial M for Murder,
Yes.
Okay.
the Hitchcock original. And it's different.
It is
Yes.
different.
There are some
Yes.
big changes.
Mhm.
But I feel like the original does hold up.
Yes.
It's a bit corny and ridiculous, the setting, because it is based on a play originally.
Yeah.
It does have that one location setting, but it does hold up, and it's almost a more watertight plot
Yes.
than this one.
Because the original is simplified, and then this one they think, oh, New York is our playground. We should try to go to the UN building. And you're thinking, no, you don't need this movie. You don't need to take us to tenements and slum neighborhoods for a single scene. It's not necessary.
Yes, where all the black people live.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. The danger zone where no white people live. Yes.
This is how you know that you're back in A, erotic thriller territory, and B, late 90s filmmaking, because it's rich white people who are afraid of people who have skin tones that are colored than tan.
yes.
Yeah. I do have to ask, though, is Michael Douglas in all erotic thrillers? Because doing research for this, he pops up all the time.
Well, he kind of created the genre, didn't he, to be fair?
Yes.
I think Fatal Attraction in 87 kicked this whole cycle off. And from then on, he did play the everyman who was preyed upon by an evil woman whose sexuality had got completely out of control. I'd completely forgotten some of them. Obviously, Basic Instinct, I remember, because it's glorious. But also there was Disclosure, where Demi Moore was sexually
Yes.
harassing him at work.
Oh, that's a good one.
Is it? I haven't seen it in
I mean,
years.
no, it's not a good one at all, but it's a good one.
It's sexy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's got more of the erotic than a thriller for sure.
Yes.
Okay. And then A Perfect Murder is kind of a late entry and slightly different because he's not so much of a victim in this. But one question I was going to pose to you guys is, who is the protagonist in this movie? Because I kind of hate all of them.
Yeah.
I think it's David Suchet, isn't it?
Right. Yes, it could quite well be. David Suchet playing the Muslim Poirot, but he's very good at it.
He
It has to be
is.
said. He kind of steals the movie, even
Yes.
though he's only in it for like 2 brief sequences. Basically walks in, takes one look at all these people and goes, yeah, something's not right. Because right from the get-go, let's be honest, the very first scene where we see Gwyneth and Michael Douglas together, you can tell that their marriage is not a healthy one. It's already a passive-aggressive cat and mouse game where they're trying to catch each other out and vaguely threatening each other.
Yes.
So it's not surprising that she's playing away, which is more than Grace Kelly gets in the original. She's not given
Anything to do.
No.
No. Grace Kelly is almost like a side character in the original. She kind of just gets roped into this bizarre case of murder and she has no idea what's going on. And even at the end, she's like, why does my key not work? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
yeah. And this, at least Gwyneth Paltrow does have some sort of character
Yes.
and she does go through changes and she tries to solve it and I guess she does, but yeah, we can talk about the ending later.
Yeah.
But I did have problems with it.
We're all shaking our head. She does have agency. It's just, I think it's the scripting lets her down. So
It does, yeah. There are some moments that I really enjoy. I think for the beginning of the movie, you kind of think that she's this trophy wife who's easily misled and gaslit and doesn't really know what's going on and is just purely about her own pleasure and nothing else.
Right.
But when she starts playing back lines of dialogue to Michael Douglas to show that
Yes.
she's either knows what's going on, she's suspicious of what's going on, that's the sort of thing I really enjoy. So, for example, after Michael Douglas has arranged for her murder, he then goes and arranges to have lunch with Gwyneth Paltrow's character and says something about, what if there were no tomorrows? Wouldn't you regret not having one final lunch with your husband? And she plays this line of dialogue back to him when she's convalescing after she's been attacked and survived it. So she clearly does recognize that this could be an escalation in their regular marital game. So the cogs are turning.
Sort of slowly though.
a little slow.
There were certain bits where like, what are you doing? Like you find your key doesn't work, but you don't tell the police that? Okay.
Yeah.
She's just going to go to the apartment by herself and just walk in.
I can't help but wonder if that's them trying to pay homage to the original, where the Grace Kelly character doesn't have that kind of agency. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like they're torn between making Gwyneth a modern woman and saying, like, oh no, we have to stay true to who the original Grace Kelly character was. And as a result, she comes in half smart, half stupid.
Yeah.
It just doesn't quite work. work.
Yes,
One of the
yes.
scenes that really confuses me is towards the end of the movie, she has this big argument with Michael Douglas where she reveals that she knows that his company's going down the drain and that business with the key, she's cottoned onto that.
Yeah.
And that office scene, he then just completely gaslights her again and she swallows it hook, line and sinker.
It's ridiculous. It makes no sense
No.
at all. Like when he explains why he put the key back on her key ring, it's like, what?
No, the explanation doesn't gel at all.
No, he does blindside her with all of this evidence that her lover is not who he claims to be and he's a serial con man. Fair enough. You can see his approach is that he just keeps hitting people with evidence and completely throwing them off balance. And you can tell that's the way he operates in business because he's basically the same character he was in Wall Street, but murdering his wife. So that's fair enough. But you'd think at this point she would just distrust everybody, especially men, not suddenly go, oh, what have I put you through? Darling, I'll do whatever you say. Let me go back and draw another bubble bath. The thing that really baffled me is that listening to the commentaries, I found out that Gwyneth insisted on this scene being in the movie. They took it out at one point, and she was really disheartened when she found this out at the script reading and said, oh no, that was my favourite scene. That was the reason I took the movie.
What?
So they put it back in.
No.
So Gwyneth actually wanted that scene. She thought that was the best scene for the character. And I thought, that's your worst scene, dear.
That makes you look dumb. I think that the front half of the film just works that much better. Like, I am enthralled in this film up until right after the murder attempt.
Same.
And then as soon as she starts to play investigator, do you realize that she doesn't ever share another scene with Viggo Mortensen after?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, she doesn't.
Because I feel like part of it is that it should be this triangle where the three of them are trying to fuck each other over. And instead, it just sends her off on her own adventure. And then it becomes Michael Douglas and Viggo Mortensen making eyes at each other. And it could work, but you feel like there's that dynamic angle missing. And I think that's what propels the front half, but it's missing in the back. And it feels a bit more sluggish as a result.
Yes, yes. I feel also that's where it veers away from the original. It does its own thing.
Yeah.
But its own thing is not that great.
Well, it's very rote, right? This is very much a conventional thriller at this point. It's lost the eroticness and it's just become the cat and mouse game, but not enough of a compelling cat and mouse. Like, we have a fairly good sense of how this will all shake out up until the point where, you know, she pulls a gun on him and she shoots him in their house.
Yeah, very odd, the ending. There were two different endings that they tested at the time. One where she just shot him in cold blood without there being a struggle at all.
Can't do that.
And then the one that we have in the theatrical version, which is her finding herself in a battle to the death with him and then blowing him away.
Right. Can you imagine how much better it would have been if she had been a femme fatale? You know, she gets rid of Viggo and she gets rid of Michael Douglas, like, and she's the one who comes out on top with her inheritance and her UN ambassador aid job and everything. Just like, I would have loved for her to have like ended this film with a brunette hair color and like a red lip or something, and she's just doing her own thing now.
Yeah.
And sort of twisting the Poirot character around her little finger as well, which she kind of does. What I admire about her character is that she is this heiress. She has a trust fund of over $100 million or whatever it is.
Astronomical.
Yeah, I know.
Why is she even working?
Why is she working?
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, she's working to save the world at the UN, and she's really good at her job because you can tell this. You get this one scene where she identifies that somebody is reading the same speech that they read in the previous conference. So she would have nailed Melania Trump in a syllable. But yeah, she's really good at her job. The other thing I really admire is that she apparently is C-3PO.
She speaks every language.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it gets her out of every situation that she's in, even if she wanders into the non-white areas of town. Because she speaks Spanish, they call ahead and say, don't rape this white woman because, I mean, otherwise they obviously would have done.
Oh,
Of course.
But because she speaks Spanish, it's fine. And then she gets away with murder at the end of the movie because she also speaks Arabic. So obviously the answer is have a trust fund and know every language.
Yeah, I've already gotten all the Rosetta Stones out of the library just in anticipation of this. I'm ready to plot murder.
I did think the fact that she did speak every language was going to be a plot point, though.
Something bigger, right?
Yeah, something like a big twist at the end. She knows this word means this instead, and I don't know, but no. They didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I mean, speaking about problematic characters, I mean, what do you guys think of Viggo Mortensen's character?
Well, I mean, he is very sexy in the movie. This is the year before he was cast as Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. Well, the year before he got a rather panicked phone call from Peter Jackson saying, whoops, we hired Stuart Townsend and he's rubbish.
Yeah.
Please come.
Please save this role.
So yeah, he even has the same hairstyle. So he looks great. I do like the way that he doesn't play this character as the fast-talking, smooth, charming guy. He's much more rooted in this artist persona, and you feel like because he comes across as a sort of mumblecore slacker, he's more of a boa constrictor that will slowly creep up on you. And I appreciate his commitment to that all the way through it. And then towards the end of it, you know, he stops shaving and smacks gum while he's talking. So clearly he's evil. Mm-hmm. There were a few cases where I kind of wished he was a bit more dynamic, that there was a bit more modulation in his performance, because sometimes I was almost falling asleep and not terribly threatened by him at all.
Yeah, I thought his line delivery was like infuriating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole mumblecore thing. When he says like, I envy you, but it comes out like, I envy you. It just, what did you say?
He's a painter. He's not a talker.
True.
No.
True.
No, I quite like him. I will confess, yes, some of the dialogue delivery is a little mumbled, a little jumbled and jargoned, but I like the fact that he seems committed to the con. Like, he doesn't, I think, consider himself to be a bad guy. He's just looking for women who will enjoy his company and that he can maybe take a little off the top when they're not paying attention and so on. And I like the idea of that kind of man, like a petty criminal, being entrapped into something that much larger. But again, I think it kind of falls apart a little bit in the back half because I don't find him convincing when he's trying to blackmail Michael Douglas.
Yeah, because it was the push and pull of being an artist in love or the con man. I don't know whether the con man aspect worked. Like, it's not like I expected him to, like, you know, twist his evil mustache or anything, but just some sort of backstory. Maybe he was conning another woman at the same time. But for the most part, he just seemed like an artist in love. And yeah, I didn't really buy the con man aspect.
Well, it's particularly confusing when, after he thinks that Gwyneth Paltrow's Emily has been murdered, you see him crying.
Yeah, he's grieving.
And even later, when he's absconding with the money on the train, he's got a little picture of her that he's painted that he puts up like, oh, there's my love. I'll remember her fondly as I run away with all of this money. You're just saying, no, it can't be this way. It has to be that he never cared about her because he was a con man.
Exactly.
Or like he can't believe what he was forced to do and he's upset about it. Like the film tries to have it both ways.
Yeah, I do feel like the film tries to make you sympathize with him. Like, he didn't mean to do it, but it's like, but you did hire someone to murder Emily, right? You did do that, so...
And the fact that we never get a scene with her confronting him about that. Like, she never truly ends up having to address the fact that it was her lover who was going to kill her or who hired this man, right? Like, we get that scene with her and Michael Douglas in the office where she gets to get it out at him, but she never gets to give it out to Viggo Mortensen. There's no catharsis there, and I'm very frustrated.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a huge scene that's missing that could have propelled the third act, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
The two of them trying to figure out how are we together going to sort out Michael Douglas. You know, that could have been interesting if they'd actually made him a sympathetic character with a sketchy past. But I think he was probably written as a cold-hearted con man, and I think Viggo probably brought the more sympathetic aspects to the role because he gets very into his roles.
Right.
For example, I know that he painted all of the paintings that are in the artist studio and he wanted to live there except for the fact there wasn't any plumbing or heating. So they
Right.
managed to persuade him not to do that.
We want you to go method, but not quite that method. We need you to look sexy.
Yeah, we want you to stay alive.
Yeah, I did watch it with my wife, and she was very upset when she was expecting a sexy shower scene with Viggo, but instead got a sexy shower scene with Michael Douglas.
Oh, yes. I mean, I do think that Michael Douglas actually looks quite good in this role. He's still the kind of rakish older gentleman at this point, but I mean, you've got Viggo Mortensen right there.
I know.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't an awful lot of the sex. I mean, apart from the opening titles where it basically replays Basic Instinct. But again, it kind of stops halfway through the movie and gives up being a sexy thriller.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the sex scenes were sort of downplayed because it was Gwyneth? Because she's not, she's not normally the vixen.
No, she's too prim and proper, right?
Yeah.
Gwyneth. Oh, Gwyneth. This is the most Gwyneth that you can possibly Gwyneth in the late 90s.
Is it?
Like when she shows up with that blonde hair and she's all chunky knits and furs and you're just thinking,
Oh, yeah.
yes, okay, here we go. This is the woman who was on Brad Pitt's arm and then she was America's sweetheart and we hated Angelina Jolie in a couple of years after this.
Yes.
How could you do that to this Gwyneth? Apparently she was uncomfortable during the sex scenes, so Viggo had to sing to her.
Yeah, which apparently he thought might have just made things worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would have enjoyed her as a femme fatale, though, because they did portray her at the start like that. And I thought, oh, this is an interesting take. But they didn't commit.
Well, no, there's that scene, and I saw a couple of reviews actually praise the film for her, but I think it's a bit of a folly where she's confiding in her coworker, who, P.S., if this film was made today, I would hope that that coworker would actually be like our main character because she's far more dynamic and interesting. She's talking about how she feels bad about having the affair and she thinks maybe I'll come clean. And you're just thinking, no, this isn't what I need from this. I need sexy cat and mouse games in this erotic thriller.
Yeah.
I don't need lover's remorse.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and the best friend is clearly there just so that she can voice what she's thinking and do some expository dialogue.
Oh, of course.
But there's not even consistency between their two scenes.
No.
So you have one scene where she's saying, why do you want to leave Michael Douglas? He's so perfect. He's so wonderful. And she says, well, you have this idealistic view of him. When you're married to him, he's actually a controlling nightmare.
Yeah.
But then later in the movie, she goes back to her friend and says, what do you think Michael Douglas would do if he found out that I was having an affair? And her friend says, he'd kill you. And I thought, well, that's a switch around from your idealized view of him that you had just one scene ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which we're meant to believe is, what, maybe 24 hours later?
Yeah, exactly. So there's no consistency. She purely says what she's required to say for the plot.
Yeah.
But at least she's not a gay man. Pretty much usually what happened with Best Friends in the 90s.
Except then we would have gotten another body at least, right? We only get one murder in this perfect murder.
Two. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, two. Viggo gets killed as well.
Yes, that's true.
Right.
How's this for wet work?
Oh, well, technically three.
Who's the third?
Michael Douglas at the end.
Oh,
Oh.
of course.
Right. I suppose he is also a character who dies in this movie. By that point, I'm just like, bring in David Suchet. Wrap this up. Wrap this up.
I was surprised that they used the same ending as the original. I mean, the big twist with the key,
Yes.
where it was.
Because it feels outdated.
It did, but I did actually like it. It was something that worked in the original, and I felt like it did translate. But in the same time, there was all this other stuff going on at the same time in the ending that kind of didn't really make sense.
Yeah, I like the simplicity of it. Like, it's a simple thing that Michael Douglas gets wrong that gives him away. He's thought of everything else, but this little thing of the killer putting the key back means that he takes the wrong key and puts it in Gwyneth's handbag. But by the end of it, I've completely lost track of the key.
I think because, you've got the blackmail shoved in between as well. So you kind of forget about the key. So
Yes.
when it is revealed, it is a good twist, but it makes you think, oh, yeah, that's right, the key. What?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think problematically, in the original, it really works because all of those keys would have looked similar in
Exactly.
that time period in London.
Yeah, there's that one scene where he, compares two keys, they look the same. It's like, Good job, film.
There we go. Okay. I will believe it now.
Yeah, I believe it.
I think the other thing that surprised me was that this film introduces so much visual voyeurism that I thought that they were going to lose the key angle and make it more about like video cameras or that kind of stuff. Because there's shots of Viggo Mortensen taking pictures of Gwyneth when she arrives. And Michael Douglas actually mails the letter to himself right outside Viggo Mortensen's apartment. So I thought we might get a secret reveal later that he was being photographed mailing himself the letters. And then there's a bunch of stuff about like hide from the video cameras to get into the underground parking lot here and so on. So I kept waiting for a reveal that there were cameras in other locations or that people had been caught. And it never comes to anything.
No, it's the one place where they could have updated it in some way, whereas they're still relying on a technology which, given that they don't bring across the title Dial M for murder and it doesn't have to hang on the telephone, this whole business of Michael Douglas giving him an alibi because he makes a call on one flip phone and then makes another call on another, as if the police wouldn't think it's possible to have two mobile phones and to make two calls at the same time. He could have had 5 of them. And similarly, there's no reason for Gwyneth Paltrow to get out of the bath in 1998. She's comfortable in there. She's got her candles. She's rubbing her legs together like a fly. Side note, do women really do that?
No.
Did anyone else think when she was lighting the candles, like, do they smell like her vagina?
This is where she got the idea for it.
Of course.
No, I love to watch the way that women talk and move and react to things in an all male written and directed production, because you just think, no, I'd rather don't think so.
No. And she certainly doesn't need to get out of the bath to answer the phone.
Because no one has an answering machine in 1998. Like,
ridiculous.
I'm sorry, I don't know about you two, but if I'm in the bath and I'm just enjoying those, Gwyneth Paltrow vagina candles and the suds, I'm staying in the bath.
Rubbing your legs together.
Yeah. I'm going to keep rubbing my legs. I'm not going to get out and answer the phone 20 meters away.
Yeah, in their huge cavernous apartment.
Oh, man.
Yes.
I do love that the set designers took special attention to make each room, there's, I think, a European art room, there's an African art room, and so on. So I did like that if you pay attention, you'll just think, oh, these people are filthy rich, like so just rich. Astronomically rich.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to reflect her job as well at the UN, that she's absorbed all of these different cultures. So the whole house reflects those, and the house is much more her than it is him.
Right.
And his office is him, and it's a little bit colder. And the film does look beautiful. I mean, it's shot by Dariusz Wolski, who had just come off of things like The Crow. So he was used to things that were much more visually stylized, and then suddenly finds himself with the task of making scenes of people talking to each other interesting.
Yeah.
And he does a very good job of it, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like the most is the introduction to David's loft when he's showing Michael Douglas around, and we go up in the old-timey elevator that looks like it's about to break and kill them. And then they open up the space, and we're constantly seeing characters through the paintings, and especially early in the film where it feels like we're being introduced to these new spaces, there's a real dynamicism to it. Like it feels like there's a lot more motion to it because we're not paying attention to the plot semantics. We're able to focus on the environments that reflect who these characters truly are.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never been up in an elevator like that. Do they actually exist?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't see them anymore, I think, but in old buildings, I mean, it feels like one of those hallmarks of 70s films, right? Where you might even have a bellhop who will open and close the door for you.
Yeah. Sure.
So the film looks beautiful. How do we feel about the score? This is James Newton Howard. He'd worked with the director Andrew Davis before on their much more successful film, The Fugitive. And I think the sound that he created, which is the traditional Hollywood orchestra, but mostly propelled by a combination of live and synthesized, bordering on techno percussion, So it seems to be trying to incorporate the dynamism of The Fugitive just for a bunch of people standing around talking, and it feels a little bit overscored, like sort of thundering left-hand piano just for Michael Douglas posting a letter. Just feels like a bit much for me. I do love the score, I own it, but watching the movie with it, I thought, ooh, this feels a bit much just for this.
It feels like a score for the second half of the film that doesn't then work for the first half.
That's true.
Because I did think of the violent encounter between Michael Douglas and Viggo on the train when it's an action sequence. And, I think because it's going back to The Fugitive, you're like, oh, okay, it's an action scene now. It feels more akin to that. But I think the only time it really worked for me early in the film was setting a bit of a tense encounter in the art gallery when you're not sure where Michael Douglas is going to pop up on them. It's very low key, though.
Yes. I like that scene because he's really menacing and you get the sense that there's real danger here. And also that everybody knows. It's kind of like that thing with James Bond villains where everybody knows who everybody is, but they're all pretending that they don't, even though they know that everybody knows that they know. And it's just ridiculous, but it's quite fun.
Yes.
What did you make of the music, Dan?
I loved it for all the wrong reasons, I guess. Like it's so typically 90s thriller.
Yes.
You've got your programmed drums and your like a fretless bass and then like some sort of ethereal like female vocal on top of it. It's like that's it. That's 90s thriller in a nutshell for scoring. I wish they kind of continued with that through the film. I actually liked the first half with the score because the second half it sounded much more generic, like almost Jerry Goldsmith at times for me, like very percussive, weird time signatures, kind of like, oh yeah, that's expected. But I like the sexy female 80s almost inspired cheesiness of the first half.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't feel like very inspired, James Newton Howard. I mean, he has done a lot of really incredible scores.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to see him conduct his first ever live concert, which was in the Albert Hall. Remember when we could all be together in large crowds in the Royal Albert Hall? And he was magnificent there, and he played some of my favourite cues from his scores, from things like Snow Falling on Cedars. And But this feels sort of like him on autopilot, in the same way that this movie is trying to be The Fugitive for Hitchcock.
Yeah, it feels like a lighter version of it, right? Like, okay, we got the band back together, but this isn't the greatest hits. This is us kind of phoning in the B version of a better film.
Yeah, it really does. Looking at Andrew Davis's back catalogue, after he does a Chuck Norris and some Steven Seagal movies.
90s.
Of course.
Yeah. Hits it big with Under Siege in 92, gets the job of The Fugitive in 93, which is a massive blockbuster. Does some weird comedy called Steal Big, Steal Little.
Apparently it was a personal project.
Right.
That's all I know about it.
Okay. Well, if you're going to do it, you do it after The Fugitive, I guess.
Yeah.
And then tries to come back to the big time with Chain Reaction, which famously has Keanu Reeves as a nuclear physicist.
Of course.
Him and Denise Richards, they're obvious candidates for these roles.
They really are. Which did have Jerry Goldsmith doing Jerry Goldsmith half asleep 90s thriller music. Then you come back to this, which was a bit more of a success, but I don't think it's particularly remembered. And then he tried to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Collateral Damage, which ironically was collateral damage itself post 9/11 because nobody really wanted to see terrorists blowing up buildings in 2001. So it was delayed to 2002 and then vanished without a trace. He did, after that, direct a film that I really like, Holes, which is this funny Shia LaBeouf Disney movie with Sigourney Weaver in it, which I really like because it's kind of quirky.
It is.
Yeah, they kind of kept getting the band back together, but never to the same success as The Fugitive, unfortunately.
It's an interesting filmography, right? Because most of those titles that you listed are more straightforward action films. And I do think that that's one of the challenges that this film doesn't ever figure out is, does it want to be the action film that it is in the second half, where we've got sudden reversals and people dropping money and getting killed on trains and so on? Or does it want to be the more traditional Michael Douglas erotic thriller? And I can't help but wonder if it's because it's coming out at the time period where action films are still doing decently well, but erotic thrillers aren't.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find its ways, and it just doesn't quite hit either of them.
Yeah, you're right, because most of the big erotic thrillers were 92 to 95.
Yeah.
And this, interestingly, 1998, this is a Hitchcock remake in a year which also had another Hitchcock remake, which also had Viggo Mortensen in.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
The ill-fated Psycho remake by
Gus Van Sant.
Yeah.
Yes, which everyone looks back on so fondly.
Now it's time for random trivia.
So in terms of trivia, everyone said the trivia I was going to say. But there's a little bit of information about the original that's kind of funny. So in this remake, Michael Douglas offers to pay Viggo $500,000 to kill his wife with a $100,000 advance. In the original, he offers the killer $1,000 with a $100 advance. Wow.
Wow.
You could get so much for your money back then.
Yeah.
You really could. Maybe it's star power. Mind you, Grace Kelly.
I was gonna
you
say,
see, I think Grace Kelly's
she's
worth more
more-
than Gwyneth Paltrow.
Absolutely. Although Grace Kelly never founded, a scented candle dynasty.
That's
so-
true. That's true. Yeah, she wasn't big in the old egg business. So,
Grace Kelly's goop.
yeah,
Yeah, it just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
it doesn't. No. I'm not sure people would want to stick Grace Kelly's eggs up there. I won't go there.
She was a princess of Monaco, right?
She was, yes.
She was, yeah.
We know because we have that terrible Nicole Kidman movie to prove it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I have a bit of trivia, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
My bit of trivia is that alternate ending that we've been making reference to, when they shot it, because Gwyneth was already in the UK filming Shakespeare in Love and couldn't come back to the States, they actually disassembled the kitchen, filled it into something like 20 cargo boxes, flew it over to London,
No.
reassembled it in
You
Pinewood.
can't be serious.
What?
No, they flew over Darius Wolski and Andrew Davis and the crew and filmed that short sequence. That alternate ending was actually in Pinewood. It's not in America, that sequence.
gosh.
And then they didn't even use it. So God only knows how much that cost. So if you wonder why movies are so expensive, this is probably why.
Madness.
I know. It's insanity. That's our trivia.
Yeah.
In some ways, this feels like an experiment of Gwyneth Paltrow's popularity. Like, Viggo was a non-entity. I think he was cast as the hot guy. Nobody knew that he was going to go on to become something famous. Obviously, with Michael Douglas, you know exactly what you're going to get. And in that capacity, he really does deliver. Like, he is fully playing this character that we know and expect from Michael Douglas, right? It's half Fatal Attraction, half Basic Instinct, and then the other half is Gecko from Wall Street, right? He is giving you what you want. So really the question mark is Paltrow. And I don't see this as a great vehicle for her because even though she does get a lot to do, the character isn't that interesting. But you can see the star power in the way that she's costumed, in the way that the camera loves her, in the way that she's obviously very likable. Like, you don't want to see her get murdered.
Yeah, she's very sympathetic, although I kind of lost patience with her in the second gaslighting scene in the office. Yeah, and then she shoots her husband, which in the alternative version where she shoots him in cold blood, apparently that turned off the test audiences.
Oh, of course it does.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was surprised by the gun, actually.
Oh, like you weren't expecting a gunfight at the end?
When I first watched it, I thought, where did that gun come from?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because we haven't had Chekhov's gun. We've had Chekhov's meat thermometer.
Yes.
The gun does come out of nowhere, and it does feel tonally off in
Yes.
the same way that the ending of Fatal Attraction feels tonally off, even though it's quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
And again, that was an alternative ending that was forced on it by test audiences, because originally Fatal Attraction had a much more sort of subdued, intelligent, emotional ending.
Right.
But instead they thought, no, let's just blur away in the bathroom.
Yeah, I just found when he was putting all the stuff in the safe, they didn't show anything. So, like, I guess he put everything in the safe.
Yeah.
the gun, the tape recorder, the money.
It's all of it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. But like, they didn't really show it. And so when she uses the gun, I was really confused. I didn't know where it came from.
No, and it doesn't satisfy as an ending either. I mean, I don't mind that she kills him.
No.
I would have preferred for her to have done it without prompting. I didn't need this pseudo fight scene. Either that or I needed the fight scene to go on longer.
I wanted more.
It feels too brief.
Yeah.
If you're going to do this, give it to us more. Like, destroy this apartment. Break all that art. Really have them go all out on each other. But
Yeah.
I think there's something unsatisfying about her using a gun because it doesn't feel at all in the character.
It was too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was too soon. There wasn't the struggle. There wasn't the moment where you think, oh my God, she's screwed. Because first of all, she uses it once.
Yes.
And then she runs away for some reason. And then he grabs her and then she uses it again. So you just think, okay, that was quick.
Yeah. Shoot him again. She still got it. It's not like she has to grapple for it or anything.
No.
Yeah, she drops it, but then she just grabs it again. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no sort of sense of tension at all.
It's mishandled entirely, actually, that end sequence. It's so unsatisfying.
Yeah, I almost would have rather that they switched the weapons and had, like, I know if you're going to shoot somebody on a train, it's going to bring a certain amount of attention, but I would have rather Michael Douglas shoot Viggo and her end up having to stab Michael Douglas in the apartment.
Or maybe bludgeon him to death with a
Right.
frying pan.
The pot.
Yeah, so it could be
Sweet.
a callback that he
Yeah.
actually gets the pot.
It's already been teased as a weapon. Give it to
Yeah,
us.
Chekhov's saucepan. We haven't had that one.
Completely sidebar, I guess. When he walks in with the bag of the shoes, the brand new shoes, and she says nothing at all. He walks in, he puts it down, and he starts talking, and she says nothing. It just made me think, wow, they must be so rich. They buy shoes every single day. No one asks any questions. It's just whatever, shoes.
Yep.
The other thing I quite like is that when he does this sort of to and fro with Viggo, where he says, have you got a box big enough for $100,000? And then there's the later scene where he actually gives him $100,000 and it's two very small bundles of cash.
Yeah.
Like everybody has a box big enough for that.
It's a shoebox.
Yeah.
Everybody has one.
Yeah. Doesn't even fill the shoebox.
No.
It's just pathetic. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, I think we all know what he's talking about.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hey, it's the Mobley Awards. It's where we leave no clue left unturned as we present our favourite blood-curdling parts of the film in the number of not quite perfect categories.
Best quote.
Michael Douglas plays Michael Douglas pretty well in this movie. And I did like the just almost over dramatic theatrical performances when he's confronting David and David says, "We're in love, sir." And he replies, "That's it. You steal the crown jewel of a man's soul, and your only excuse is some candy-ass Hallmark card sentiment. Even if it was true, that's not good enough." And just like the amount of commitment he puts in is just amazing. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That whole scene is fantastic in terms of Michael's performance.
Yeah, and then you switch to Viggo with his "I love you so." You're for me.
Quick, turn the subtitles on. Yeah. Well, my favourite quote comes from the side police officer character. So just like the relic, the funniest line in the movie probably comes from these two police officers that are just off at the side commenting on things. And this guy says, in the murder scene, looking at this enormous house full of artwork, he says, "Rich people are different from you and me." And David Suchet says, "How's that?" And he says, "Well, they got a fuckload more money to begin with."
I really expected something funnier, like they have too many shoes, or they've got giant rooms, or something.
Yeah. And David Suchet does just come back with, "Very good, Mo," and just walks off. It's just not very impressed at all.
We needed more David Suchet. And also, Dan, I feel like one of the main things that you don't like about this movie is that people just don't remark about the shoes enough.
I know, they don't. Shoes are expensive, okay?
Never forget it.
Best hair or costume.
So I will confess that I think Gwyneth's hair in this film is actually one of the most iconic parts of it. Like, I don't know that people remember this film super fondly, but when you see her hair, it is so defining in terms of like the platinum blonde, the particular cut. It's a very late 90s chic modern woman cut. And then when she's walking around in a kind of ill-fitting fur jacket with a turtleneck cable knit, it screams late 90s fashion icon to me, like in both good and bad ways. But I could immediately see, oh wow, this is a woman that regular female audience members will look at and covet these looks, that hairstyle and that rich lady wardrobe.
Yeah.
The costume designer Ellen Moroznik, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, said that she should look like she's just walked off the cover of Vogue.
I would say mission accomplished then.
Yeah. My favourite actually is when Gwyneth appears and she comes home from work and she says something to Michael Douglas about, oh, you look so handsome, let me see if I can catch up. And she looks drop dead gorgeous. And you think, well, what the hell are you going to do, woman? But then you find out because she basically just drops trow and appears in the next scene in suspenders and a shirt and shows most of her bottom.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, there's an iconic look for Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't think I've seen her like that before.
Yeah.
So
Most 90s moment.
It had to be the moment that he pulled out the two flip phones.
Oh.
I mean, they could have been bigger, but I do love this idea that, yes, you know, oh my gosh, he has not one but two phones, and one of them is a burner. I do love the shot, actually. Davies, I think, frames it really well, where after the poker game, we follow the back of the car and we just watch the window roll down and the burner phone goes out the window into the, you know, garbage-covered street. But yeah, burner phones, flip phones, 90s. I love it.
yeah. And little aerials that you have to pull out.
Yeah, so much deliberate precision.
Oh, yeah. How about you, Dan?
90s, I don't know whether it was, this is just my opinion, but the villains of 90s films were always just bankers. Like Wall Street guys. They had big offices, they wore suits all the time, and that was, it was always, the villain was the man, you know, the corporate guy. I guess Viggo was supposed to be like the everyman, the artist, but I don't know.
Yeah. What I was going to say is probably just this idea of seeing incredibly affluent, bored people trying to kill each other feels very 90s. I mean, I just can't see these as aspirational figures anymore. No. It seems like most movies now are about working or lower middle class people that have a bakery or something. It's not usually people in cavernous spaces who dress like Vogue and have artwork everywhere.
We just want them all to kill each other.
Yeah. It's well precise.
Favorite scene?
So my favorite scene is that moment in the art gallery where we see the unexpected arrival of David. We get a sense of what their private, personal relationship is like in the way that they interact with the other patrons. But that moment where Gwyneth leaves to walk by herself, we cut to Viggo and we can see that they're making eyes and she just shakes her head no, but they still, like, he grazes her arm when he meets her and they're not that private. Like, they're still in a very public space. I just love the sense that, oh, okay, these two are fucking. She's got a really potentially violent, powerful husband. This movie could go places. It feels like like that's the moment where you think, okay, I'm on board with this and I want to know where we're going to go.
Yeah.
At the very start of the film.
It is, admittedly.
It is,
yeah. I mean, I like the murder sequence as well, because I do think that's exceptionally well shot.
And it's also quite a light touch. It's quite subtle. There are nuances there. And of course, it's affluent people in a museum, which we now know you love.
I do. I really do.
How about you, Conrad?
Mine is the scene where Michael Douglas confronts Viggo, because although Viggo is mumbling all the way through, I like the energy between them, and I think Michael Douglas is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he is full volume up to 11 Michael Douglas, and he's threatening. It's kind of funny as well. It's wryly cynical in a few places. It just shows you why he is the superstar that he is and why he was so good in this era doing this kind of movie.
Yeah.
Most cliche thriller moment.
I would say my cliche is two criminals meeting on a ferry
Yes.
Yeah.
and not looking at each other while they hatch a plan. And the thing about this that I've always found confusing is after they've sort of had their terse thing where they sort of threaten each other a bit and walk off, you can't really do a dramatic exit from a ferry. So what are they just sort of politely ignoring each other for the rest of the ride?
They just enjoy the scenery, I guess.
You stay on this deck. I'm going below to the bar. Don't come down there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't get the mechanics of how this works, but it's the Staten Island ferry, so I guess it's a short ride.
Right.
How about you, Joe?
I think my least favorite thriller cliche was when she says, I know the combination to the safe as well. And she's had time while he was in the shower to open that up, find the tape, find the gun. And you're just thinking, it's all come together so well for you in the closing moments. And
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. I would have liked her to have discovered that earlier or in some other fashion.
Sure.
Yeah. And Dan?
My thriller cliche, this is more so for sort of conspiracy thrillers, but the evidence is always some sort of tape recorded conversation.
Yes.
Because everyone's wired all the time.
Yeah.
Best special effect.
The only one, it's just the murder scene with the meat thermometer in the neck and then the blood splitting.
Yeah.
I like the splitting.
I will say the squib work when she shoots Michael Douglas at the end is really over the top. Like that first time she shoots him, there's just a huge geyser of blood, and you think, didn't she just get him in the shoulder?
Yeah.
Yeah, he must have really high blood pressure.
He's so stressed. Chernobyl-level.
Yes.
Favorite sound effect.
My favorite sound, it's not just one sound, but more the soundscape of a scene. So it's when Gwyneth has gone back to the apartment and she's kind of recalling the murder. And she's walking down the hallway and you hear... So what's great with the sound is you hear parts of the murder. So you hear the phone ringing.
Oh, yes.
When she gets into the kitchen and she looks at the knife block and you hear the knife sheath sound. I thought it was really well done and more subtle because normally in a scene like that,
You'd be
you would
getting
just have a
flashbacks.
flashback.
Yeah.
And it would have been super cheesy, but it was
Yes.
just nice and subtle and it was still obvious what was going through her head, but it was nice and subtle.
I like that.
Most funniest moment.
I feel like it's only funny because we're in 2021 and we can see just how frickin' racist it is. But that moment that she shows up and she speaks Spanish and gets the free pass, it's so offensive. I had to laugh because I just thought, oh no, white lady in danger, white lady in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really bad. Especially coming so soon after Candyman, which did this in the same thing, but in such a more intelligent way and was addressing the issue quite pointedly.
Yeah, that's critical of that kind of action. Whereas here, you're meant to think, oh, thank God she knows these languages, or this poor woman would just be dead.
Yeah.
How about you, Conrad? What was funny?
My funniest scene, I think, is the one where Michael Douglas is being snarky with David Suchet when they're in the murder scene, because I think David Suchet's already clocked that something is not right here. And so Michael Douglas just starts getting sassy with him.
Yep.
So he's saying, I can see that you were standing over him at this point by the footprints. Why were you standing over him? And he says, well, to check he was breathing. And he says, well, was he breathing? He says, not at that time.
And that concludes the Moobly Awards.
Lovely.
Hello, I'm Lance Guest, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
And now it's that time. Final verdicts, everyone. Should a perfect murder go scot-free into the world and be revered by the masses, or should it be jailed for life for the many murders and blackmail it has committed? Throw away the key and be forgotten from 90s thriller cinema. Joe, you're our guest. You picked the film.
Honestly, if we could have had an entire film from the first half, this movie would be a slam dunk. And I would totally say, yeah, it's a classic. We should be reviewing this. But it just falls apart so badly in the back half. It's so boring. Yes. And that's a cardinal sin that I can't forgive an erotic thriller for. It should never be boring. So unfortunately, I think it's got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm biased here. I really like the original. I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. And it's as corny and sort of ridiculous the details in the original are. It is more compelling than this. Up until the murder scene in the remake, really, really, really good. But after that, it just sags and goes in directions that it shouldn't go. I wasn't invested and I didn't know who to root for. And yeah, I don't know. Strange second half.
Yeah, it's not a perfect murder, is it really? It's quite imperfect. And it's such a shame because it looks beautiful. It's a great cast. They're all doing their thing really well, except Gwyneth, who's not given much to do, really. And we're given nobody to root for, and I don't care. And it's too long. And it's...
Wow. And the list goes on.
And it's the 90s, so it's ultimately very forgettable, I think, which is the reason why it's in the Oubliette, and I think it should stay there. So it's unanimous, I think.
Yeah. Put it back in.
What if there's no tomorrow?
Back you go. Take your cleft chins with you. So, Joe, thank you for bringing us this wonderful piece of 90s nostalgia to look back on. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed hearing your thoughts on it. Where can they hear more of your thoughts and follow you?
So the best way to keep track of everything that I'm up to is give me a follow on Twitter. My handle is @bstolemyremote, and that's the letter B. And if you want to hear me do a version of this with my co-host, Trace, you can listen to Horror Queers, and you can follow that @HorrorQueers. And that is all.
Marvelous. Well, everybody should definitely check them out. I was listening to some more of your episodes over Christmas, and particularly eye-opening I found was the Better Watch Out episode. Yes. Because I love that movie as just a gleeful, dark Christmas fun thriller. And yes, then I heard your guest's take on it and thought, oh no, I'm a bad person.
Yes, that's not the intention, but it's more to help people think, oh, I like this, but also should I be critical of it? And the film wants you to be that way, but it's not always a conversation that's happened.
No, it's not. So I really appreciate it. So yes, do check out the Horror Quiz. It's fantastic stuff.
Yes, and if you want to keep in touch with us, you can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Movie Oubliette. We do love all your messages.
We do, and if you want to send us some sexy email, you can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
And if you want to give us the money without the murder, you can become a patron on Patreon. For $1, you get to nominate films and get access to bonus extended segments, and for $5 you get a mini-sode once a month
where we review a new film that we've just seen, which is really exciting. Not something that everyone's forgotten about, so it makes a nice change.
And please, if you haven't already, give us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you are consuming us on.
Yeah, makes us feel good.
Yes. So, Conrad, what's up next?
Well, next time, speaking of patrons nominating movies, that's what they've done for our next episode. So I've popped all of their suggestions up on the Oubliette Roulette. Oubliette Roulette.
All right, I'll give it a whirl. Ooh.
Ooh. Ooh.
Come on, come on.
Ooh. No, stop.
What is it, Conrad?
Wow. Okay. It's a Nicolas Cage movie.
It is?
This was suggested by Serge of Cold Crash Pictures, and it's Serge. 2011's classic, Season of the Witch. Ooh. I have not seen this movie.
We haven't covered Nicolas Cage yet, have we?
We haven't, no. And Nicolas Cage is he's a mixed bag of delights, isn't he?
He is. It's a lucky dip of the worst lollies or the best.
It's like those all-flavor beans in Harry Potter. It's either chocolate or earwax. isn't it?
Yes.
So thanks for suggesting that one, Serge. And yes, anybody else out there, if you would like to start nominating movies for future episodes, do head on over to Patreon and join in the fun.
Please do. Thanks again to Joe Lipsett from The Horror Quiz for joining us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Yes, it's been great.
Join us next time, listeners.
Bye for now.
Have a good one.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
Hey, Steve, do I keep fucking your wife or what?